So welcome to the Node.js Community N-API Team meeting for December 20th, 2018. We'll follow our standard agenda of going through the milestone. I think, though, the first thing we should probably just talk about is, I know Arunish has mentioned that he has a conflict with the current time, so maybe we can talk a little bit about if there's any other times that would still work. Now I'm just looking to see, I'd asked him whether earlier or later worked. So let me just find that. Okay, sorry, where is that? So he said 1 to 2 works on Thursday or Friday. So I guess 1 would be moving this up 1/2 hour, right? How does that
that's
work
right.
for people?
Yeah, that would work for me, Michael.
Does that work for everybody else, Gabriel and Nicola?
We need to delay half an hour.
Yeah, it would be half an hour earlier. Because currently it's at 1:30 my time, and I think
Okay, it's okay.
1 o'clock. Now, let me just see if he's... I can do 1 or 2. I'm hoping he meant 1 or 2 as opposed to 1:30, but I'll confirm that with him. So would 1 o'clock, so basically 1/2 hour earlier work for everybody?
Yeah, for me it's okay.
Yeah, that works for me, Michael.
Okay.
And Gabriel, I think, has stepped out for a moment.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll just ping Arunish and see if a half hour earlier works for him. If so, then we'll move on to that. Okay, so let's then open up the standard agenda. Okay, I'm going to open that. Oops, I'm in the wrong one. Okay, so I'm just opening. So focus on async worker, the number of issues, problems we should work through. I know we had a good discussion before I was away on holiday. I've seen Gabriel do a little bit of activity on that. Is there anything we should discuss this week on that topic?
Yeah.
I just remember one very cool thing from the discussion with Eric, and that's this idea that we could use Lambda functions to actually do something very similar to JavaScript async await. And I'm wondering how we can fit that in there, because that's a really worthy goal, I think, because it would give folks a very good sort of handle on doing things in a worker thread. That's the only thing. It's very vague. I know. I'm sorry, but
right.
I just remember this, and I don't want us to forget it, because it's a really good sort of look and feel to the code.
That maybe like we discussed a bunch of ways we could fix the existing implementation, which I think is probably a good thing to focus on first. Is this an extension to the existing one, a new API, or?
Well, it depends on where we take the existing one, right? But ideally it should allow this ability to just, you know, you say something like a new async worker bracket, and then somewhere in the brackets there's like a lambda, and then that lambda runs on a thread. You know?
Right. Okay.
So that would be huge, because then you could do almost what JavaScript does, right? You do the new async, and then later you could even await it, or you could well, you'd get the on okay as you do now. But just the ability to use a lambda there would be huge.
So I
But
guess
anyway,
maybe I'd suggest open an issue just to capture the idea so we don't forget about it.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll do that.
And then you could sort of tag that as a separate thing to this issue, to this one here. So once we've worked through the sort of tweaks to fix up some of the problems pointed out, we can look at that one too.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, I guess if that's it for that one, the next one is investigate N-API to help avoid future breakages. I don't think there's been anything new on that issue, but I did want to mention this issue, which I will, maybe I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
This guy. So I did want to share. Oops, I could have sworn I opened an issue. Did I open it in the wrong? Let me check. Oh, okay. So this, yeah, I opened this in the wrong one. But there's some discussion just starting on, could N-API be built under NAN? The, you know, and I just saw it this morning, so I haven't had any time to think about it. I for some reason, I believed it wasn't really possible because, like, NAN would still, like, NAN doesn't hide all the types, so I'm not quite sure how you could use N-API and fix the problems people run into. And if you don't fix that part, then there's still changes. You're still subject to the changes in V8 and so forth. So, but the discussion seemed to be that, hey, this might make sense. And so maybe I just put it here so that we think about it and don't forget about the suggestion.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but NAN also has very poor threading of the isolate, right? Like there are a lot of NAN methods which don't take an isolate, and then they just have like a globally stored isolate or whatever. So that's also kind of a hurdle when it comes to an API, right? Because we explicitly pass what is essentially the isolate around all the time. So yeah, that could make things brittle as well.
Yeah. I definitely think it's worth, since Rod and Kay Koopa seem to think it was possible, it's worth us thinking about it and responding. But my gut feeling is there are some issues there, which is why we didn't start with that in the first place.
Yeah, it's and I mean Kay Koopa is right in that it's a lot of work. Like he did say he didn't have the time. So
yeah, I just think we should, like, if it's not possible or feasible, we should, you know, it would probably be good to figure that out. You know, it came out of a discussion where there's an issue open in core that says these modules are going to break when we go to 12. And it's you know, the holy grail would be if NAN used N-API under the covers and magically hit everything, well, then you'd get all the modules we haven't managed to get to move over yet, right?
Well, yeah, I actually had like a sort of not even half baked, like more like 1/10% baked effort to start like a V8 shim,
right?
And then NAN itself would find that transparently available, but that's also like a huge task.
Yeah,
you know, I was working my way through like the add-on examples that were using V8, and just basically replacing the just using my include file instead of the v8.h include file, and then doing like an inline a replacement for all the V8
Right.
APIs.
Okay. Right.
It's a monster of a task.
Like-
And one of the worst parts about it is that you have to be very careful how you write the header, otherwise it'll start using the symbols exported from V8 because, well, they're available, right? So
Right.
so you have to kind of you kind of have to elbow your way between
Right.
the user's code and the V8 symbol,
Right.
you know.
I
So
guess maybe that shim is exactly what they're thinking. If you did hid the types, if you hid the types, so you basically made something that looked like V8, but under the covers it used N-API, then you could.
yeah,
and then you did the same
there's a
for
problem
NAN.
though.
Yeah.
You'd have to stub out everything that N-API doesn't support and complete the v8.h file that way. And then you know that would only work for modules which happen to use things that are covered by an API. But yeah, I don't
Right.
think there is
Yeah.
any way to well, I shouldn't say there is no way. There are a lot of V8 APIs which are basically just like global static functions. They're not classes, and they don't deal with instances of classes. You know, things that happen directly on the isolate. You know, where you set like performance counters and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't even know if we need to bridge that, because you know, if a module is doing that, then N-API will never have that, and so the module
Right,
will
yes.
always be
Yep.
will always be V8 specific.
Yep. No, I wouldn't put any of
it's a
that
matter of-
specific stuff in.
Yeah, the coverage would be imperfect no matter whether we end up rewriting NaN or portions of NaN to use N-API, or whether we end up writing a V8 shim that is backed by N-API. It would be imperfect, and it would cover some modules. Some modules would happen to work because they happen to not use any
Right.
of the APIs that are not provided, but it would be a happen to all the way, and it would not in the long run remove the need for those modules to be actually ported to an API in order
Right.
for them to be API stable.
Right.
So it would be a stopgap no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's what they were thinking, like a shim, because certainly you
Okay,
need
but
more than just NaN. But
exactly, yeah. So but the fact that that somebody is asking for this means that there is desire to move to NaN in some way, shape, or form, and of course, add-on developers are realizing that the burden is a lot less on them if NaN were backed by an API, because then they could claim, okay, I have an API support and my work here is done.
yeah, well, this even comes from, like, you know, in the Node project, we've got things which are failing due to V8 changes, and so there, you know, it came in. I don't know how NaN got pulled into the discussion, but you know, you can. It's not even the module maintainers, but us knowing that things will break and saying, well, how do we avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and we can preempt that with such an implementation, but not 100%.
Right.
And I mean,
like everything, it
you
comes
know,
to like how much.
Exactly. And suppose we release a version of NaN, right? I mean, that can break modules too, because now we're saying, let's say we have a NaN 3.0, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then modules will upgrade to that, and you know, we'll get feedback saying I can't really move to NaN 3 because of this and that, you know, and we'll have to say, yeah, sorry, then you'll have to stay with 2.0 and deal with the breakage.
I think that's
right?
a separate issue, because you could have a separate branch, you could do all sorts of things, like, or you could have NaN 2 or whatever. Like if it was feasible to have a shim, like, and this would not be in theory for new modules.
No, of course, yeah. New modules
It'd
should
be
go
like,
directly for an API.
yeah, it'd be like if there's an existing module already using NaN, if there was a shim, if a shim plus NaN, and I guess if you had the shim, you really don't need anything special in NaN, because the shim should just be handling it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, in a sense, I don't really want to go into NaN, because NaN is doing this is doing this storing of the isolate and all that stuff, and
Yep.
I'd rather not do that. You know, I don't want to have to learn how NAN does that. You know,
Right. Yep.
and I know that NAN does it correctly for V8 because it does end up passing the isolate in the end to all the V8 APIs that need it.
Right.
So
Yep.
somehow NAN does it. Great for NAN. And now all that it would have to do is store the env instead of the isolate and use its existing magic to pass that everywhere. And so,
Right.
so I'd much rather write the V8 shim than actually change NAN, honestly.
Right. But that's still a pretty big effort, right?
Oh, it is. It
Yeah.
is. The question is, I mean, is it worth continuing? Because like I said, I did get through most of the basic stuff. But,
Okay. And
you know,
it was working?
Yeah, mostly. Like it's basically just work your way through one segfault at a time. That's
right.
You know, and you keep hammering at it until it doesn't segfault anymore.
I mean,
You
it
know,
really
bearing
comes
in
down.
mind-
It really comes down to, like you said, how much would you cover, right? If it covered a good number of modules, it's potentially worth it.
Yes. But yeah, it's a pretty big sort of Hail Mary, you know.
Yeah. I mean, because you were how far through, would you say?
Oh boy, I don't even remember where I put the code for that. Yeah, this was one international relocation ago. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah, let me see.
my main motivation here was, I think it's a big enough thing we're not going to solve it, but it seemed like there was a discussion going. We should probably understand it and at least chime in. And you've already relayed a bunch of things I think would be interesting to chime in with, right?
Yeah.
Like basically your suggestion is, well, you shouldn't, if you're going to do something like this, it really wouldn't even make sense to do NAN because of the type thing, which is what immediately came to me. But the shim part would be able to handle that, and then NAN would just run on top of it, right?
Yes, exactly. Let's see. /v8 \h $. Okay. Oh, Nappy NAN. There we go. Found it. CD node add-on. PI. Okay, CD shim v8.h. Yeah. Right. So yeah. Okay. I think I got all the way to things like references and weak callbacks and that kind of stuff. So yeah, like exceptions are done. Obviously, the thunking is done, which is really strange because I mean, you're going from something that looks like V8 to something that goes like that's NAN and then back to V8.
Yeah, no, I mean it's not necessarily going to be super performant either, but
yeah.
Even so.
Well, actually, on our side, like on the shim side, it need not be any. I don't think we need to copy things anymore because the on the V8 side it uses what looks like an array, right? And it has like the square bracket operator, and in the shim the square bracket operator could just be like a memory offset. So in that sense, it shouldn't add too much more overhead.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So yeah, I got handle scope, I got function template. Function template is a funny one too because it's really nothing in N-API because we don't have function templates. But there was a trick where we have NAPI define class, right? But that is one call where you specify all the possible methods, whereas V8 uses this function template thing, meaning that you create the function template and it has no methods, and then you call methods on the function template instance to add methods and so on and so forth, and then you call get function. And so this is kind of a limiting factor because I believe that you can add methods after you've called get function. And so basically, if we want to implement this, it would the function template would end up having to be like a collection object, which calls NAPI define class in a very, very, very lazy fashion because unlike V8, once you've called N-API define class, that's it. You can't add any more methods.
Yep.
So then this turns into quite sort of a catching the plates before they fall exercise, because you have to make sure that you've collected all the methods that the add-on is ever going to define before defining the class,
Right.
and so you define the class when the method starts using the resulting constructor, or when the add-on starts using the resulting constructor, and hope that that's good enough.
But I mean, if that was the only problem, if you have something using, well, like for example, and that's something where maybe in NaN you could then, I don't know, maybe there's an entry pointer. Or I guess what I was going to start on, if that was the only problem, I'm sure there's if you said, oh, and here you add in one extra method call, and now it works.
Okay, yeah. So some
right,
buy-in from the add-on.
If you're going to do an update to a new version of NaN, maybe there's some work, but if that work is so simple that it's, if it's significant easier than a port to Node add-on API, you still have reduced the friction.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, that's true. But I guess we can be lazy enough about adding that step as a function of how many add-ons need that step. So if this happens to work for like 90% of the add-ons,
right,
then we can publish it like this and then add the step for the remaining 10%.
Exactly.
Or I mean, it may even be as simple as having them rearrange the code, like don't define any more functions after you've retrieved the function.
Right.
And you don't really need to change your code. You just need to rearrange things which so far have been orthogonal but are no longer orthogonal.
Right. And did you already have wrappers for integers and strings and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think so. I can warm up this effort, bring it back from the back burner to the front burner, and see how far I've really gotten. And then I can maybe, I don't know, just file an issue with a summary or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be useful. Like if nothing else, maybe. And if there's interest, we could potentially, put another repo, which is, this is a potential alternative to Node add-on API. Like really, we think Node add-on API is the way you should go.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, that's a very, very good point, because the shim is backed by not by an API, it's backed by Node add-on API. So
okay.
So it is inline on, yeah, it's inline on top of the inline.
Okay. So it's even like on top of that. So
yeah,
it would be like, okay, and here's an easier way for transition to consume.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
The question is, would NaN work on top of that? Right, like pretty much it has to, right? Because a lot of the things use NaN.
Yeah.
Be like, is there anything in NaN that doesn't work? Because if that doesn't work, then maybe we're, it's tougher. But if that shim, if you have the shim on top of the shim on top of the shim on top of the shim, maybe it's something that helps.
Yeah. That's
I think if you can warm it up and put it in a place people can look at, and then we can chime into this discussion to say, hey, you've already done this great work on that. Maybe it ignites some excitement in people and they get involved to help or something. Right?
Yeah. Okay, good. So warm up.
Because people have looked at, sounds like Koopa has looked at it, and or Rod's, they may look at it and say, well, hey, if I do this and we help to put a little effort in, it helps to reduce the work in NaN itself, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's good to have eyes look at it. That much is certain. And so I'll do that as soon as possible.
Okay, that sounds good. So really, I just put that there so that we don't forget. And it sounds like you've got some good work we can do. The next issue is SQL8 N-API port 288. So I have talked to Anisha. Unfortunately, she's not making too much progress, and I haven't really had enough time. Like I think I'm at the point where I'd probably have to spend at least 4 hours in a row, which is what I have trouble getting, to understand how the asynchronous function is working there. We did work through some of the cases which look pretty straightforward, and I think she's going to start changing those. But there's a set of tracing functionality where there's enough wrapper and indirection that it's unclear how it's working. Like we found two methods that basically say this runs on the the separate thread, this runs on the main thread, but it's totally not obvious how that happens. They're basically two functions with the same signature. And so there must be some C++ magic that decides when one is used versus the other. But just to say, to make a long story short, is, Anisha's going to ask the module owner if he can maybe spend some time and walk us through that as a way to get that unlocked. Sort of the history there is, we thought we were closer on the port, but when I looked at it, it turned out that we had a lot of direct libuv calls. So so while we'd replaced direct calls to V8, we hadn't removed the UV dependency. So that's where there's still a fair amount of work to be done.
Michael, I might be able to get involved with that to a certain extent after the first of the year.
Okay.
If you want a hand on that.
Absolutely, that would be great.
Okay.
So if I don't know when, I'm gone starting the end of today. I don't know when Anisha may be able to set up something with the owner, but when that happens, I'll try and make sure that you're included as well.
Okay, very good, Michael. Okay. I'd like to see if there's anything I can help with there.
Yeah, no, that would be good. So we'll get you involved in that. And next time I get together with her to sort of discuss the status, I'll try and pull you in there as well. Because I think it's something that, for me, it's just the challenge of finding a big enough block of time to push it forward. And if you can help, that's really good.
Okay, great.
Okay, next one, burn down list of issues raised by module owners and burn down list of issues in Node repo. I don't know if there's any particularly hot ones we should talk about.
Just some good news, I think. I believe level down is now running on N-API, and that change is pushed to master.
Excellent, like level down master.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty good news, I think, because that was one of our major hitters in that list.
Okay, excellent.
So, next release should be N-API. So, and they didn't have any performance regressions either. In fact, they had a slight performance uptick, which is like almost statistically insignificant, but not quite.
Okay.
So that's pretty good.
Capture that somewhere.
Yeah, I just looked at the issue, like the pull request that they closed with that. And there was some follow up. There was some follow up regarding pre-buildify that they need to do some work on that. But I think they have all the tools that they need. But the commit to move to an API, I'm fairly certain has landed.
So I don't want to be generating new work, but I wonder if we created like a success stories subdirectory and then had like a markdown that had like the overview you just gave is a great thing to be able to point to people to.
I was thinking, actually, I should have probably done this, is where we had this issue about node modules breaking. Mm-hmm. We should probably like cross out level down or something.
Yes.
It's been fixed. Oh, but where was that? Do any of you have the issue up front?
Well, there's this one right here, 346. Avoid this one probably right here, right?
In which repo? An ABI
it's
stable?
Ours. It's ABI stable node 346. I have it open in the screen I shared.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh, yeah. This is the one. Yeah.
I'm just thinking I was just more thinking in the,
oh, here it is.
We have some success stories, but if we wanted to tell people about them, we don't have an easy way, like the port to Node pre-jip, the other one, even if we just had a couple paragraph that says, hey, this is the success that was achieved here. Hey, now you can use N-API with Node pre-jip, right?
Right. Yeah. That's true.
And this is another example of, hey, level down, move to N-API. They didn't see any performance regressions, and in fact, if anything, it looked slightly better.
Oh boy. Set N-API version to 3. Okay, I'm just following the commits in level down.
Okay.
Oh, I think this is it, 540. Yeah, N-API rewrite. Okay, so, okay, copy link location. And we go here. And let's see, level down. Okay, so edit, level down, tilde, 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 and bracket, boom, update comment. Excellent. Okay, yeah, so I just crossed it out and I put in brackets the PR that moved it to an API
Okay. Yep.
in that thing. So if you refresh, then we now have two things crossed out.
Okay. That is good.
Yeah, and actually, IconV, we have a PR from the N-API workshop, but it's kind of just sitting there because the person isn't following up. So I don't know, maybe we need to follow that one up or something. And I think that's Ben Nordhuis's PR, or that's Ben Nordhuis's repo. So maybe we can talk to him because I don't know.
So
Only collaborators can push to the PR authors branch. I mean, non-collaborators cannot push to the PR authors branch.
If you sent me an email that basically said, "Hey, this PR is there. I think it's ready. What can we do to help get this landed?"
Well, it's actually not ready because he
Okay.
did make some comments that need to be addressed.
Okay.
So but it like essentially it's like 90% ready.
Right. So is it the original author of the PR who's not responding, or Ben?
Yes. I mean, I was sitting next to him in
Right.
Kilkenny, and we did this together, right? But now we're not sitting together anymore, so I can't really poke him and prod him. You know, it may have been their free time. So I don't know how much time they have for a follow up.
Right. How much work do you think is left?
There's really not much left. So it would be a waste if it didn't go through, honestly.
I just mean, like, should we offer to take it over, the PR?
Yeah, I think it's conceivable. We should look at it first at any rate,
Okay.
and then decide if we can just push a few more commits and call it a day.
So maybe we should. Could you maybe just open an issue that has the links and everything and says consider adopting PR?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it would be great to get that there if we can push it over. Like, it's on this particular list, right? And if we can help push it over the edge, that would probably be.
Yes. Link track on perhaps adopt the PR. Okay. All right. Can do.
Okay. Well, no, that's definitely good news. And I think let's just keep in mind that, do we need a success stories or something like that we can point people to? Just that one.
I can offer one. I can offer another success story, or potential one. I mean, not another add-on that was ported, but in general, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is maybe something we should announce maybe during the TSC meeting, because we have that announcement section, is that we can now claim that native add-ons are as stable as pure JS add-ons. Why? Because we have an API to ensure stability across Node major versions, right? We have a thread-safe native add-on loading, right? Which we did a while back. I think it was Ben and I who did it, and the one other person who did that. Doing the thread local variable for the module pointer.
Okay.
And Ben with the special symbol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now with Anna's work on workers and my last PR on module unloading, we have proper cleanup of modules, right? So basically, if you write a native add-on, and of course, if you follow the guidelines for native add-ons, now you can load it just like a JavaScript add-on, just as safely across any number of Node major versions, and it'll get cleaned up properly along with the rest of the JavaScript engine when the thread shuts down. So we are as close to being on par with native JavaScript or with pure JavaScript modules as probably we ever will get, as far as I can tell. So
I would think that's even more of a blog post, which we could then get published under the Node.js account, like the Medium account or something like that.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that's pretty significant, right? Because add-ons have always been there, but they've kind of struggled to keep up with the project, right? But
So
with
I
these
think,
tools,
yeah, if you want to write that blog post, I'm like 90% sure the people at the foundation will say, yeah, sure, we'll publish that.
okay.
So the way forward I'd say is, you write it, we just pass it by the TSC to make sure nobody has any issues, and then I can help coordinate with the reps at the foundation to get it to go out.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is pretty significant. So we should probably, because there are a lot of add-ons out there that still assume that they're only going to be loaded once.
Right.
So hopefully this will spur them to sort of encapsulate themselves better and make themselves ready for, like, first of all, multi-context, second of all, multi-threaded.
Yep.
Third of all, unloading.
Yep.
So because
I think something like that is hey, look, this is now possible, and hey, here's what you should do to take advantage of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And we already have this, but we don't really have like a unified flashlight shining on all this new functionality. So yeah, hopefully this will raise awareness.
Yep. And it's the kind of thing that the project does want to be saying, hey, look, we're making progress in areas and stuff. So
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good news. Any other topics? I saw some failures in the CI today, but I think that's just something you were running yourself, right?
Yes. I was actually, we have a long-standing PR in Node add-on API for removing or for starting to make use of void star parameters for property descriptors, and it's been approved since like October, so we should probably land that. And I was just doing it on nightly, and I was going to do the other.
Okay. Well, it seems to failed across the board. So.
Oh, whoops. Okay, so we need to look at that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was doing just before the meeting. So
yeah. Okay.
I'll keep doing that.
I got some emails. I'm like, oh no, and then it's like, oh wait a sec, there's no new commits, and it's like, okay, it's not the automated one, it's the one you launched. So.
Yes.
Okay. Any other? I know there's a bunch of issues in discussion, but are there any others we should highlight and talk about?
The shared array buffer API. Yeah, you were right, and I commented to that effect.
Okay.
If we don't change the API at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we add functionality to the body of an existing API, then that is also semver minor, because that's exactly what we did with Mukdir, right? We added the option for recursive Mukdir, right? And that ended up being semver minor, even though Mukdir didn't change in any way. Now, okay, I understand that the signature of the options object is like an explicit change, but in this case, we also have an explicit change, right? Because it's the JavaScript type of the array buffer that you pass in, whether it's an array buffer or a shared array buffer. That is also a flag, right? The JavaScript type. So that would be semver minor. So at that point, you can't have the API be stable in version 3 while at the same time being experimental. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, exactly. Like the way I look at semver minor is, can you write code that uses that and then revert to an earlier version? And if the answer is no, then it's semver minor.
Yeah. So like if this becomes especially pointed if you have an add-on that just uses the typed array but doesn't actually create the buffers itself. It accepts a type array from JavaScript and it just does stuff with it.
Right.
Including retrieving the backing store, right? And so as things stand now, it would be nappy get typed array info, right? And that would return an array buffer. And the add-on could safely assume that the value returned is indeed an array buffer. But if we change it, then the value returned could be a shared array buffer, which would not work with the N-API array buffer APIs, because it would fail the type check.
Right. So I think it just needs some guards internally. Like internally, I didn't think through if we could actually fix it or not, but it's likely that we could have internal guards that basically say, act as if it wasn't supported if it's not experimental isn't turned on.
Making runtime decisions on whether experimental is turned on is not a good idea, I think, because
Well, it wouldn't be a
especially since
runtime. Does it, like if the API is the same, it doesn't require a runtime check. It can be a compile time check, right? Like what would happen today if somebody passed in a typed array? Or
if
sorry,
somebody
the array buffer, the new type.
yeah, a typed array backed by a shared array buffer. Yeah,
Right.
then that would probably fail.
Right.
Yeah,
So
let's write the test, but yeah, it would probably fail. But I don't think we should add if-defs into the implementation. Like so far, we've assumed that the implementation is built against N-API experimental, so that the implementation is always maximal, right? So everything must be available because some module owner could be building with N-API experimental, right?
right.
So when we build Node.js, it has to have all the experimental stuff, right?
Yes, I was thinking in what's yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
Like,
Well, except they've defined, yeah, you're right. So they define, yeah, okay. Had not thought through the fact that, yeah, we build it at a different time from when you would want to be testing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but basically, I think there is a solution. It may not be as clean as we'd like, but I think if we create an API something like an N-API create shared type array, which accepts only a shared array buffer, then that solves the problem, of dealing with typed arrays backed by shared array buffers. And that creates a completely new chunk of API, which looks almost identical to the typed array chunk and the array buffer chunk, but it is a different chunk. So yeah. And then for that we have a clear pipeline. We mark the whole chunk as experimental, and eventually we mark it against some future version of an API.
And if it does this, like, are you talking about something that's completely separate, or do we do something that's like what would have been if you could extend the existing one, give it a different name, at which point you might deprecate the old one at some point?
I don't know. It's okay. Like just because typed array is one type in JavaScript that can be backed by two different things doesn't mean it has to be that way on the native side, right? Like we don't need to reflect the JavaScript elegance, right? We are not about the elegance. Like we leave that to JavaScript, right?
No, I was just saying that's one other option.
Well, I mean, implementationally, it would definitely be one of those, templated. Based on a Boolean value things, and you call one template from one create typed array, and you call the other template from create shared typed array. So that would definitely be that way.
Yeah. Okay. So behind the scenes, it uses the same code. And exactly. I have no strong feelings. I was just throwing out.
Yeah. The only problem, and this is I also mentioned this in the comment, and one thing we should look at, because I don't even know how you do this in V8, like. If you get a typed array from JavaScript and you retrieve the info, right? Mm-hmm. How do you determine whether the stuff that you got back is an array buffer or a shared array buffer?
And doesn't matter though.
Exactly. Yes. So if shared array buffers will pass through as if they were array buffers, then you can call the N-API get array buffer info to retrieve the actual pointer and all that stuff. On a shared array buffer, if the engine makes them transparent, then we can do this with like semver patch, because then what that means is that we wrote our type checking things to be too specific. We didn't need to write them to be as specific as that, because they are transparent, and the engine makes them transparent.
Right. Now, of course, okay. So we shouldn't. Yeah. Like if it should have been from the beginning, but we didn't do it. You might argue it's a bug.
Yeah.
And then, then we'd have to say, okay, but the path then is to get that to go back as a bug fix.
Yeah. But that's a big if though.
Yep. Okay.
So.
Because I bet you in some cases it's like you shouldn't have to care or know.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, how do you even distinguish? If all you deal with is typed arrays coming in from JavaScript, typed arrays which you did not create, right, and about which you cannot assume what they are backed with, and yet you need to retrieve the data behind them, then how do you do it?
So does our
How do you
code,
decide what it,
does our code figure out which type it is, and then
our code assumes it's an array buffer.
okay,
So,
and as opposed to a shared array buffer? But how, if it makes that assumption and it really doesn't matter, how is it assuming things that cause breakage?
well, you say n-API get shared n-API get typed array info, and you pass in a typed array that's backed by a shared array buffer. If shared array buffers and array buffers are supposed to be completely transparent, then that call should not fail, right? Because it shouldn't check that what you retrieved is an array buffer. It should just get the data from it.
So, but then what do we do that causes it to fail?
Well, we assert that it's an array buffer that is coming back.
Ah, okay. So we just do a check at the end.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So that if the only change is to basically change the assert to allow one or the other, that does seem like a bug to me.
Yeah. Yeah. See, we say, well, actually, we don't assert, but we call buffer equals array arrow buffer. So we call the buffer method of the typed array object instance. But is it safe in V8 to call array arrow buffer if that buffer is a shared array buffer? Or, because that function isn't a maybe. That thing returns an array buffer directly, a V8 local V8 array buffer. So what happens if the typed array is backed by a shared array buffer?
That may if it's truly transparent, it shouldn't matter. If you don't care.
Exactly. Yeah, but okay, but what that tells me is, okay, but then why does V8 have a separate class for shared array buffers? You
need to do some special setup potentially.
Yeah. I mean, the question is it completely transparent? Because if it is, then all of this stuff is Semver patch.
Well, does it even? Is it even? I guess I haven't looked at the code, so I don't know. But like, if it's as transparent as you say, like, how is our code even wrong?
No. It wouldn't be wrong because V8 would ensure that it behaves correctly, right?
Right. Yeah.
But what that would mean is that when you create your typed array, you can just pass in an array buffer as is, and then we already have support for array buffer. And then the only things you would have to add, which are Semver minor and initially experimental, would be these new APIs.
Right. Yeah, right. So I think we're on the same wavelength. Like, if
I'm sorry. There is one thing we need to fix. We have in n-API create typed array, we have return status if false and value is array buffer, n-API invalid arg. So that would be wrong. That would be a bug because it's not an invalid arg if it's a shared array buffer, right?
Right.
So we'd have to change this to return status if false and value is array buffer or value is shared array buffer.
Right. So we'd want to make that.
That would be a bug.
Basically, that would be a bug, and we would basically, like, I'd almost say if that's the case, we'd want to submit that pat change separately as a PR, or get that landed and then argue it back as a fix, right? To the
yes. That would definitely be a fix. Yes.
And then separately have the rest of the functionality added, right?
Exactly. Yes, and that would then be clean. It would be a clean experimental to specific version pipeline. Exactly. But we need to test. Like, so basically, I'm going to write a test that just creates a shared array buffer. It's going to be one of those hybrid V8 n-API tests because I'm just going to cast the resulting value as a n-API value, and then see if it passes through all our APIs. And if it does, then we can fix our APIs to actually accept shared array buffers.
Okay.
Sounds
like a plan.
Yep, and then that should clarify what we need to do. Because the alternative, correct me if I'm wrong, is this templated approach where we pass our inability to deal with them transparently through to the native side, and then to create a typed array using a shared array buffer becomes a separate function, and that too will pass through the experimental towards version number pipeline.
I mean, I can easily see that we need a separate API to create a shared array buffer, potentially.
Yes. That's clear.
It's more that once you use it, once you've got one, you should be able to use it without having to know which type it is. But you're right. If there's some reason why that's not true, then regardless of the implementation behind the scenes, it's like, okay, it's a new API.
Yes, yes, and we'll need a new API not only for creating the shared array buffers, but also for turning them into typed arrays because it's not transparent.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
yep. Okay, sounds good. Any other issues? If not, let's move on because we've only got 6 minutes left anyway. Create matrix of tested methods. I think Anisha did mention, she asked me for other things to look at well over Christmas because she'll have time. I won't be around. I pointed her at that. I don't know that there's been too much else added, but I haven't had time to look. So I don't know if there's anything to talk about on that front.
Nicola, I think you mentioned something last week, if I'm not mistaken, about these tests.
Yeah, I'm updating the table with marking the function that now are covered with some last per request.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. This is I'm adjusting. I'm editing now, and later you can see all the function that we already covered with the tests.
Okay, no, yeah, that's great. It's good to get that updated.
Okay.
And then the last issue there is how we should advocate the use of badges. I think there was a comment that you added, Gabriel, is just we need to PR that into our own repo. I think there was discussion in the N-API in the Node core repo where it wasn't really, people didn't think it was a good idea to do it there, so we should just do it in our repo, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing we were talking about last week was to maybe like during one of our workshops, like our N-API workshops, we should maybe make it part of the PR that the person submits to the module that they add the thing to the README file, like add the badge to the README file.
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea.
You know, so but I will add a slide to our slide deck that so the participants know that we recommend that they put the badge on their PR. So that'll become part of the workshop.
Sounds good. Okay, and I think the last thing is for the next week or two, who's going to be around and should we have a meeting?
I will be absent the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Good for you.
Yeah. I'm away next week, but I'll be back the week after. I think the 27th I'm away, but the 3rd I'll be back.
So I will be available, but if I will be alone, it's
Gabriel, how about you next week? Are you going to be around or?
Yep. I'm around both of these weeks.
Okay. So do you want to leave it on, and you two will get together?
Sure. Yeah, Nicola, if you want to get together next week and the week after that, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be back the week after, so just be next week.
Okay. So. Yeah.
Okay. So, but that means we're going to be on Hangout.
Okay. So happy holidays.
Yeah, in the new year, Gabriel, let's remind me, and I'll get you access to the Zoom and stuff.
Okay.
That should be easy to do since you're on the TSC now, and so anyway, just remind me, and we'll do that so you can do that one on the way.
Can you also send me a large green blanket?
Let's see. Maybe I could ship you one from. I don't have it up to date, though, do I? Oops.
Well, you have it partially. I don't know how you do that. Like, is that something your camera does, or is that something that Zoom does?
There's OBS Studio is what I'm using. It basically lets you provide a picture, and then you feed your webcam into it, and then it acts as a virtual webcam that you can use in anything.
Okay. And it's called OBS.
Yeah,
Studio?
OBS Studio.
So they hijacked the abbreviation from the Open Build System by SUSE.
Yeah, well, who knows which came first, right? And I'm
Okay,
sure
okay,
if I
but
search, there'd be a whole bunch of other OBSs as well.
no doubt, no doubt. Okay, all right. So yeah, that's good. And we'll go
Okay,
from
so
there.
I'll leave the meeting for next week on the calendar, and
Okay.
I'll see you all in 2 weeks and catch up with what you've talked about then.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll see each other next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody have a good holidays if you're taking
Great.
holidays, and
Yeah.
we'll see you then.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Michael.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
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 Hello?
This call is in regards to security software that we installed on your computer last year.